Next up on the agenda, we have Minnesota State. Welcome to the committee. Chancellor Malhotra, please identify yourself, and we can proceed. Welcome, Chancellor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Chair Lee, Vice Chair Liz Ryer, Minority Lead Dean Erdahl, members of the committee, I'm Devendra Malhotra, and I have the privilege to serve as Chancellor of Minnesota State. In the audience today, I would like to recognize a few individuals. First of all, Roger Moe, Chair of our Board of Trustees. And then I have two presidential colleagues also with me. One has already been recognized by Representative Pawlowski, but I'll do it again. Scott Olson, President of Winona State University, and Joe Mulford, President of Pine Technical and Community College. I thank them all for their service and for their commitment to Minnesota State. With me today is Brian Yolitz, Associate Vice Chancellor of Facilities for Minnesota State. Along with our committed campus colleagues, Mr. Yolitz oversees 28.6 million square feet across Minnesota. The past bonding cycle, Minnesota State hosted the House Capital Investment Committee at 22 of our campuses for them to see and learn firsthand about our infrastructure needs. We are appreciative of the time you all gave us, and by visiting our campuses and learning more about our projects and meeting with the students impacted by your work. In a few minutes, you'll hear from Brian Yolitz about our rigorous bonding process and learn how the projects make their way to a final legislative request. Funding for HEAPR and the projects on our list is about more than bricks and mortar. They are about the students we serve. For example, the classroom and student services renovation at Normandale Community College that was recently completed, thanks to you, impacts 29 different academic departments, including computer technology, computer science, economics, math, and reading programs. The work this committee does truly makes a difference in the lives of our students and the communities we serve. To give you an idea about the size and scope of the impact of Minnesota State system, our colleges and universities educate 300,000 students across the state. We have 26 colleges, 7 universities, located in 47 different communities, spread across 54 campuses. Of those 300,000 students I mentioned earlier, more than 64,000 are students of color or those of Native origin. More than 67,000 are 25 years or older. More than 60,000 are low-income students or Pell-eligible students. More than 40,000 are the first in their family to attend college, and 7,300 are veterans and service members. Our 26 colleges and 7 universities serve as catalysts for the social and economic vibrancy. Minnesota State is the most powerful and effective resource that the state has to ensure opportunity and prosperity for its citizens and communities. Our colleges and universities serve students no matter where they are on their educational journey, from a certificate all the way to an applied doctoral program. High school students or recent grads, students returning to complete degree or start another, and adults already in the workforce who need or want additional education or training. We form partnerships with employers across the state to ensure graduates entering the workforce are ready to contribute the first day on the job. And we produce more graduates for the jobs in critical high-demand fields such as healthcare and information technology than anyone else in the state. Mr. Chair, our campuses cannot do this without your help. And we are grateful for your partnership. With your permission and indulgence, Mr. Chair, I would like to turn the presentation over to Associate Vice Chancellor Violets. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chancellor. Please identify yourself and proceed, Associate Vice Chancellor.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and committee. I am Brian Yolitz, and I serve the colleges and universities of Minnesota State as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities. It's good to be with you again. Minnesota State's capital investment request for this legislative session is one many members are familiar with. It's in essence our 2022 capital budget request with 3 programmatic changes and projects adjusted for inflation based on Minnesota Management and Budget's recent guidance. The total program request is for $348.7 million. This includes $173.7 million for asset preservation projects at colleges and universities across the state of Minnesota. The balance of the request are $175 million, funds specific design and or construction work at 19 individual projects depicted on the green stars on the map of Minnesota. Just over half of these were either funded for, either fund construction of design work funded in prior sessions or fully funds design and construction of campus projects. The remaining 8 fund designs now in preparation for construction funding requests in the future. Of note, 12 of these campus projects were included in the capital requests in 2020 as well as 2022. All have completed pre-designs and are ready to move forward. They're shovel ready. The only notable difference between our 2022 request and the request today is a change in scope at the Pine Technical College project reflecting circulation around the campus in coordination with the city of Pine City. Lake Superior College, given their lease arrangement downtown Duluth, they need to leave those facilities in the summer of 2024, so this is a construction request as the campus is funding design on their own. And then finally, as priorities have changed in the community and at the college, North Hennepin Community College has withdrawn their request that members may be familiar with from our 2022 request. Given our 1/3 shared debt responsibility for individual projects, the request seeks state general obligation funding of $290 million and $538 million in user financing by Minnesota State for the 19 individual capital projects. And I'll give an overview of that in some later slides. Before getting too deep into the details, this request and priorities are the result of a disciplined process, one rooted in ongoing campus facilities planning and documented on a 5-year cycle in individual college and university comprehensive facilities plans, or CFPs. In March of 2020, in preparation for the 2022 legislative session, our Board of Trustees adopted guidelines for developing the request and priorities. Institutions then reviewed their CFPs and prepared pre-designs for candidate capital projects for consideration by our board and presentation to the legislature. These candidate projects were then scored by representatives from across the Minnesota State system against the board guidelines. The results informed Chancellor Maholta's recommendation to the Board of Trustees, who reviewed and approved the request in June of 2021, and the program was submitted to the state of Minnesota's capital budget system. During the fall of 2021, we hosted members of this committee, along with your colleagues from the Senate Capital Investment Committee and representatives from the Governor's Office and Minnesota Management and Budget, on nearly 50 campus tours across the state to see firsthand the needs and priorities of the Minnesota State system. With no bonding bill emerging in the 2022 session, we reviewed the project and program needs with campus leaders during the summer and fall of 2022 and affirmed the priorities that you see before you. Chancellor Maholta recommended and gained approval from our Board of Trustees for this session in November 2022. Earlier this month, MMB released their inflationary guidance to take into account supply chain, material and labor shortages, and applied that methodologies to our program, resulting in the request before you today. Please use the handout in your packets as we guide you and walk you through individual priorities in the coming slides. Asset preservation funding for investments in our existing academic facilities, the ones we own and need and operate day in and day out, is our #1 priority. HEAPR funding is critical to keeping our campuses warm, safe, and dry. And please understand, Our sound facilities play an important role in recruiting and retaining students, faculty, and staff. This funds 65 asset preservation projects at 38 college university campuses, ranging from major HVAC replacement at Alexandria Technical and Community College to roof replacement and chiller plant overhaul and fuel tank replacement at Winona State University. In the bonding years between 2014 and 2022, Minnesota State has requested $650 million in HEAPR funding to take care of our existing academic facilities. During that period, we've received $158 million, or about 24% of the requested amount. As a result, the estimated backlog of maintenance in Minnesota State academic facilities has grown to nearly $1.2 billion. There is an additional renewal need in the next coming 10 years of about $1.3 billion. So the total 10-year renewal need for Minnesota State academic facilities is roughly $2.5 billion. Similarly, we've seen the individual project needs grow. In our 2022 request, the average project cost was roughly $1.6 million. This request, the average project cost is $2.6 million, given the combination of project complexity, inflation, and to some extent low funding in previous years where we've trimmed project scopes to help stretch funding to touch as many campuses as possible. I cannot emphasize enough how important HEAPR funding is. Those who visited campuses saw, heard about, and sometimes could smell firsthand the need at our colleges and universities. This session, HEAPR funding cannot be strong enough, and what is needed going forward is substantial, sustained, consistent, and predictable funding in HEAPR to allow our college and university leaders to properly plan and manage campus facilities. Turning to our individual project requests, the next 4 priorities are construction funding for design work funded in prior legislative sessions. At Minnesota State University Moorhead, construction funding acts upon design funded in 2018 and renovates 33,000 square feet of Weld Hall in the heart of campus, supporting the university's English, music, cinematography, and publishing programs while enhancing accessibility for students, employees, and the public, while reducing the building's backlog of maintenance by nearly $8.2 million. Priority number 3 is for construction funding for Inver Hills Community College and the renovation of their technology and business buildings, 32,000 square feet for high-demand programs, including science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM, information technology, cybersecurity, agriculture, and paralegal fields. Design funding for this was also provided in 2018. Funding for Minneapolis College is priority number 4 and renovates their management education center to support and expand their ongoing partnership with Metropolitan State University. Finally, at priority 5 funds the renovation and construction of new space at Pine Technical Community College to accommodate the growing technical trades programs there, including advanced manufacturing, automotive, health sciences such as nursing, medical assistance, and EMT. Priority 6 of is designed of the St. Paul College Academic Excellence renovation all the way through priority 13, the Metropolitan State Cybersecurity Lab renovation, were all part of our capital budget request for 2020 as well as 2022, but were not funded. Of note, after relatively modest but important renovation projects at the Vermillion campus of Minnesota North College, the East Grand Forks campus of Northland Community and Technical College, and the Brainerd campus of Central Lakes College, is a request for the design and initial renovation work to replace Armstrong Hall at Minnesota State University Mankato. Armstrong Hall is the main academic facility on the MSU campus, and it has exceeded its useful life and needs to be replaced to create a smaller, more efficient, and flexible classroom to serve the university throughout the 21st century. Similarly, the request for design funding for the Center for Interdisciplinary Collaboration, Engagement, and Learning, or CECL, replaces 2 buildings at the Winona State University campus with aims to be a net zero facility when completed. As noted earlier, funding for Lake Superior College Integrated Manufacturing Workforce Labs is now for renovation and construction of space to provide technical spaces on campus to relocate the machine tool, welding, computer-aided design, electronics, and civil engineering programs from off-campus lease spaces in downtown Duluth that will no longer be available to the college after 2024. Finally, in this group of priorities, at priority 13 is a request to fund the design and renovation of existing space to support the cyber lab at Metropolitan State University. Finally, priorities 14 through 20 begins with the request for design and renovation and construction of a transportation trades and student services spaces at Alexandria Technical and Community College through the request for renovations at Hutchinson for programs including healthcare, construction, as well as student services spacing, those attending Ridgewater College there. These were all new requests in the 2022 program, and were also not funded. Pre-designs are complete on each of these projects. Request for the Alexandria, for Southwest Minnesota State University, Rochester Community and Technical College, and Minnesota West Community and Technical College are for design this session and will see construction funding in the future. Finally, the projects at Riverland and Ridgewater Colleges would fully fund design and renovation of their spaces this session. The total program request is again $348 million. Just changing gears slightly, I'd like to turn to past funding. We thank this committee for capital investments in our colleges and universities in the 2022 special session and the bonding bill that produced. You and your colleagues provided Minnesota State more than $90 million in capital investments in our academic facilities. This funding has made a big difference. The $46 million in HEAPR funding enabled design and construction of nearly 60 projects at 39 college university campuses across the state. The vast majority of this work is complete. In fact, I reviewed that with staff today. We're closing out those projects right now, making campuses warm, safe, and dry, and having designs ready for construction funding as soon as it's available. In addition, funding included in the four projects at four college campuses. Chancellor Maholter talked about the project at Normandale Community College, but also at Anoka Ramsey Community College. Their business and nursing building are open and serving students now, and they're having great response of those renovations of the spaces. And then finally, design for Minneapolis College and Pine Technical Colleges are now complete, and we're ready to move forward for construction on both of those. As a follow-up to questions concerning user financing, changing gears pretty dramatically from the project lists, is a discussion on user financing, and that occurred during our first meeting of this committee. And as background, by statute, Minnesota State is responsible for 1/3 of the cost of individual major capital projects at our college universities. The state of Minnesota is responsible for the balance, or 2/3, of the project costs. This provision does not apply to asset preservation work funded through HEAPR appropriations. Within Minnesota State, that user financing responsibility is shared equally between the system as a whole and individual institutions. 1/2 of the user financing responsibility is paid for from state funding to Minnesota State as a system as a whole, and the other 1/2 is funded by the gaining college or university where the actual capital project occurs. This portion is paid for through campus operating funds made up of state appropriation and tuition revenues. An example would be a $9 million project funded for a college or university would see state funding of 2/3, or $6 million in GO funds, and Minnesota State would be responsible for 1/3 of that, or for user financing, or about $3 million. Minnesota State's user financing portion would be shared equally between the system, $1.5 million, as well as $1.5 million to that gaining institution. The user financing includes both principal and interest associated with the bonds sold and financed by MMB. As a snapshot, Minnesota State's user financing at the end of fiscal year 2022, the user financing outstanding balance of principal for past major capital projects was $171 million, with an annual debt service payment in 2022 of $27 million. From a system perspective, this annual debt service amount is roughly 1.9% of total college, university, state appropriation, and tuition revenues. The impact on an institution's budget depends on the size of the college or university and their history of major capital projects. But generally, the debt service at a college or university ranges from just below 1% of their operating budget to just over 3% of the combined state appropriation and tuition revenues. If all of the major capital projects in the 2023 Minnesota State request were funded, Minnesota State would be responsible for $58.3 million in user financing financed over time and would incur an estimated $1.4 million in additional annual debt service payments. This would be apportioned through our cost allocation model that I just described between the system as well as the gaining institution. If the entire $1.4 million new annual debt service for these projects was attributed to tuition revenues alone, it would see an estimated tuition increase of about 2% overall. Chair, Lee, and committee, this concludes our formal presentation of the 2023 capital program request, as well as a recap of past funding from the 2020 legislative session and some insights into the user financing apportionment model within Minnesota State and how it impacts our college, universities, and the students we serve. We thank you for your time and attention today and look forward to working with you in this session in the weeks ahead, but also hosting you all on campus visits this fall as we prepare for 2024. We stand ready for any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So right now, we have two members' questions. First, Representative Ryer, and then Representative Pawlowski. Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chancellor and Vice Chancellor. I'm interested in talking about how you are incorporating the effects of climate change into your construction planning and practices, especially with a system like yours, where you're ranging across all of the different conditions that we would face here in Minnesota. We know we're having immediate impact, as well as the need to be resilient and plan for the future as conditions continue to become different and more severe. So I would like to hear how you're approaching that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Representative Ryer, indeed, our Board of Trustees in their guidelines for our 2024 legislative session elevated both renewable energy and resilience in the guidelines for our capital project for the 2024 session. In addition, my colleague Michelle Gerner has infused resilience in our capital planning process. I mentioned earlier on about the CFP process, a comprehensive facilities plan, and that's now baked in our template and expectation that as campuses do their planning, that's included, and then that elements of the plan then are driven into the actual individual projects that come forward. So it is indeed an important part, and our board has driven that point home very well.
Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is it accurate to assume that the list of projects that we have here in front of us have that consideration built in, or did that planning occur after these projects were conceived?
Vice Chancellor.
Mr. Chair, Representative Ryer, indeed, many of these projects have sustainability and resiliency built in based on the state of Minnesota's B3 benchmarks and beyond, building benchmarks and beyond, and sustainable buildings 2030 standards. But and that's what's reflected in these projects. In fact, I would highlight the Winona State University Cecil project going towards a net zero. I mean, that's the hallmark of resilience and sustainability in that request. But each one's got elements of that in terms of energy efficiency and the use of and consideration for renewable energy. As we prepare for 2024, our board has doubled down on renewable energy and sustainability, and I think you'll see a different makeup of projects in that request in the 2024 legislative session.
Representative Pawlowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Yolitz, for answering my question from the first meeting. I want you to repeat the statement that you just made about the impact on tuition for the committee.
Vice Chancellor.
Mr. Chair, Representative Pawlowski, I back up in my notes so we spent a lot of time on the math, so I wanted to make sure we got it right. So from a system perspective, the annual debt service is roughly 1.9% of college and university total state appropriation and tuition revenues at the campus level.
Representative
Mr. Chair,
Pawlowski.
Representative Yolitz, so the impact on tuition again is what?
The impact on tuition, depending on how we work that through, is about 2%, could be.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Yolitz, can you explain to me why this provision was put into law? What was the intent?
Mr. Chair, Representative Pawlowski, it's a bit before my time, but I've been able to study under the tutelage and mentorship of many. And my understanding, it was that the desire of the 1/3 financing was to reduce and somewhat dampen the demand, if there was some skin in the game, if you will, in capital projects and not spending anybody else's money. And I think that was the basis of the provision. I think we've got either an author of that bill in our audience or others, but that's the way I understand it. And I took a look at what has happened since 2011, and Minnesota State has been basically flat. In fact, this capital budget request, if fully funded, would reduce our footprint by about 50,000 square feet. But I think we're gonna see more of that in the future as we try to make buildings more efficient and more effective in the future.
Representative Pulaski.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate that, Mr. Yolitz. I'd look at it just slightly differently. You say it's flat. I would say the intent of this was to lower the requests because you were using tuition to pay for them, and that did not lower the request. You say it's flat. Some of us would take a look at this and say we're still increasing the number of new requests. So, Mr. Chair, I planned in the Higher Education Committee to take a look at this also probably next week, and particularly with the tuition part of it. I want to have drafted provision, and I'll either put it in the higher ed bill, Mr. Chair, if you think it's more appropriate here, to repeal it.
Thank you, Representative Pulaski. I really appreciate you bringing attention to this issue, and I do know that I think members of this committee do have some interest in looking at this further too, and so we can have further discussion, whether that's in higher ed or in a potential bonding bill as we move forward. Thank you.